What's up, MMA fans on YouTube? I know you guys have been asking for a video for a while, and I know you probably noticed I'm in a rut here with my football team, so I do apologize for that. I just had so much in my mind, and I really don't get a chance to talk about them too much to anybody I know because I really don't know any Bills fans personally. Uh, so I just talk about them here on YouTube. But anyway, MMA was, probably you could say it was a historic week in mixed martial arts. If you were to ask me a year ago, would Brock Lesnar be a champion in MMA, period? And I would have told you no. Would he be a champion in the UFC? I would have told you definitely not. And, here he is, UFC heavyweight champion, and it's probably, he's going to fight the winner of Nogueira and Mir. And to be honest with you, I think that's just, it's a bad matchup for him. I think the biggest thing he has going for him at this point is he's a massive guy. He's just a huge guy. I mean, you saw when him and Couture were staring down, it was like, holy crap. Like, the size disparity didn't look that big at the weigh-ins, but then when they were in the octagon and they were facing off, it was just like, Jesus Christ. How is Couture supposed to fight this guy? Like, he's huge. Even when he fought Tim, it was a size difference, and you could tell how much bigger and taller Tim was. It's just Lesnar is just so thick and not just a massive guy, and he's a wrestler too, which also, his strength against Couture's strength, coupled with the fact that he's younger, coupled with the fact Couture took another year off in his early 40s, and maybe the reflexes aren't as sharp. He obviously just wasn't able to get the fight where he needed to be. The strength advantage was apparent when Lesnar had his leg and Couture's leg in that funny position, and he just flung him like a child. And the punch that he knocked him out with really seemed like just a grazing blow. It didn't even seem flush on the top of the head. But I think Brock's strength is just that he's just really big, and he's a wrestler. But I think when you get guys like Mir, who's already submitted him and sort of has his number, and I don't know why, it's such a disrespectful thing. You hear anybody who would say it now, they're like, oh, if they fight again, Mir, Brock's a different fighter, he'll destroy Mir. Mir's got great jiu-jitsu. Brock puts him on his back again, he's gonna get caught in something. He'll get caught, and Nogueira will probably do the same thing. Nogueira's great at taking a beating and going down and getting the submissions on the guys. We've seen it time and time again. I mean, Bob Sapp, God, is there a bigger guy than Bob Sapp that was wailing on him like as hard as he was, and Nogueira was able to survive that. Cro Cop was just beating him to a pulp and submitted him there. And Tim Sylvia, the same thing. So what can you say? in a way, it's kind of poetic justice, because Couture, all he could talk about is how the UFC screwed him, wasn't paying him properly, wasn't bringing in the best fights for him, namely Fedor, and he goes out and loses against Lesnar. All pretty much Couture wanted was mainly was a big payday, and he got his payday. Not as big as probably he would have liked, but he probably got a decent payday from it. And he loses a fight. Where does he go from here? He was never a big heavyweight to begin with. He was more. Last night he looked more like a 205er. Really, he really did. He looked like he did in his 205 days, and even at 205, he was generally the smaller guy. Even his fights against Tito, his fights against Chuck, he was the smaller fighter once they rehydrated. So we'll see what happens with him. I mean, he's still got a lot of name value. He's still a good fighter. Probably beats most guys that he fights against. With the exceptions of a few. I don't think he'd beat Nogueira. I think he'd probably beat Mir. I think he could probably overwhelm Mir. Definitely doesn't beat Fedor. Who knows where he goes at this point. Some other interesting stuff from the card. BJ Penn getting called out by Kenny Florian. It's kind of funny. Kenny wants to test himself against the Masters, and he's going to get his shot because that's the worst thing you could do against BJ is piss him off, because he's a guy who likes to be pissed off. He likes to be, he likes for a guy to like combat him in terms of trash talk. He enjoys getting into that. He kind of doesn't really like when a guy doesn't do that, like with Matt Hughes and stuff like that. Matt would, go back and forth with him a little bit, and he enjoyed that. Same thing with Sean Sherk, but again, I just think that BJ at 155 is mission impossible. It's just there's a lot of people. I don't know if there's many people at that weight class that could take him out. I think one of the only guys that could maybe give him a tough run for his money at that weight class, in my opinion, is Calvin Canty. I think Jay-Z could probably give him a good fight. I mean, he's fought. He's a great stand-up fighter, able to the guy's name escapes me right now, but he stood toe-to-toe with a great Thai fighter for as many rounds. He escaped Aoki's submissions, and that guy is as nasty as it gets on the ground. So I think that he presents a lot of problems to BJ, and I think obviously BJ, we know what he presents. He's just a beast, and at 155, I don't know that Florian is just. I think Florian could make the fight respectable for a round or so, but then BJ would overwhelm him and probably stop him. Maya is looks great. Got to the fight where he wanted to very, very quickly. Submitted Corey with no problem. Kind of felt bad for Corey. He's a feel-good kind of guy. You want to see him succeed, but he put the fight where it definitely did need to be, and he ended up losing. Gonzaga. I don't know how much you can take away from that Gonzaga fight. I mean, he beats not a no-name, but a guy who never fought in the UFC. First time on the big stage. He's fighting a guy who's fought for the UFC heavyweight championship, a guy who's knocked out Cro Cop, and he pretty much, knocked him out with ease. Didn't look like he was in any danger at all in the fight. And that's pretty much it. There was a pretty nasty knockout by Jeremy Stevens. That was a brutal uppercut. He really, that was one of the nastiest uppercuts I've ever seen. He had some other good fights in that card. Aaron Riley and Jorge Gurgel really put on a great show. Good stand-up battle. They were really flinging it. Some kicks, a lot of good kicks in that fight. A lot of good kicks. That was something that you hadn't seen from Gurgel, really, is those kicks. And I think in training up in Boston with those guys up there, he definitely got his kicks in order and was doing a good job. He loses another close decision. Kind of tough for him. It's really it was a good card. Wasn't as up for it as I am for this next card with Evans and Griffin and Nogueira, Mir, Vanderlei, and Rampage. That's a phenomenal card. Those three fights alone that you're gonna, after the two initial fights, you're gonna be able to sit back and see those fights is a great thing. The Affliction card is getting finalized. The UFC is just continuing to put deeper and deeper cards on. You're starting to see cards in advance 4 and 5 months already, and they look pretty thick. You got BJ and GSP coming up. That's going to be a great fight. BJ's next, obviously, his fight after that is obviously going to be Florian, so we know what's going to happen with him in the upcoming months. The Affliction card is getting finalized. I'm anxious to see Vitor, who he's going to fight. I'm anxious to see who they're going to put in against Barnett. Excuse me. I don't think that the Fedor Arlovsky fight is going to go far. Obviously, I think if Roy Nelson can put Arlovsky on his back and put him in an awkward position in a fight, I think Fedor is not going to have a problem doing that to Arlovsky, and he'll definitely get the submission pretty quickly. He's got a shot to knock Fedor out, but I don't think he'll get that done. Something else that comes to mind, we got to see a WEC card. It was a pretty decent card where Uriah Faber was pretty much considered one of the top guys in the world in his weight class, if not the top guy. He pretty much went out there and got a little cocky and just got knocked out cold by Mike Brown. Tried to try some crazy spinning back elbow and just pretty much walked right into a brutal punch, put him on his back. and the same night we got to see a pretty much a, a fighter have a mental breakdown in the cage. I liken it to I saw Lennox Lewis fight a guy years ago in a boxing match, and the guy's name escapes me right now, where the guy just didn't want to fight. He started crying. He just sort of just mentally collapsed in the ring, and it was a guy that had defeated Lennox in the past, and Filio didn't get to that point, but he just, wow. I mean, it was released by the UFC today, and Zuffa doesn't want to fight at 185 anymore. I mean, does he want to fight? Period. It's just kind of wow. A guy who was undefeated, a guy who was considered top two. He's just coming out of rehab. You gotta. How much did that help at this point? You gotta. It's also close friends with Carter Arona, and a lot of people have wondered where Arona is. And you gotta wonder if those guys, being so close friends, they kind of share the same demons and issues too. So you don't know what happens in these guys' personal lives, and when they're not on TV, and you got video promos trying to pump them up. They're human beings just like me and you, and they go through trials and tribulations. And obviously Filio's going through a lot right now, because he just looks like a guy who's not. He's not there. He's definitely not. He's not there, and he's definitely. I think they would do good to suspend his license until he gets his head about him, because he's going to go out there and get himself hurt or something. But that's about it. I'm really looking forward to this end of the year card though that the UFC's putting together. It looks like just the Vanderlei and Rampage fight alone has got me excited, and couple that with the Griffin and Evans fight, I'm very, very much looking forward to that. Then obviously the title picture in the UFC's heavyweight division gets cleaned up even more. We're going to find out who Lesnar's going to fight. Is it going to be a rematch with Mir, or is it going to be a fight with Nogueira? I'm banking on Nogueira winning this fight. He's a guy who's shown he can come through time and time again in tough situations and persevere, and Mir is kind of done the opposite. He gets in a tough spot and he kind of wilts under the pressure. I mean, he did persevere through Lesnar, but Lesnar obviously, pretty much is very, I think even still is very raw in the sport and still needs a lot more seasoning. But let's hear what you think, MMA fans. Sorry I haven't done a video in a while. Hope you like the segment, and you guys are great. Get my ass in gear here and just try to do my thing a little bit more frequently. Until then, you guys take care.